From Mortal to Divine, a cultivation epic, Episode 7. Ah slept so soundly. After resolving the case of the female corpse in the river, old Chen and his son returned home and enjoyed a good nap. To be honest, there have been so many things happening in the village lately, and the father and son haven't had a proper sleep in a long time. But Chen Xiaobian, who had just woken up, found that his father had already gotten up early. "Dad, why did you get up so early? I'm not as carefree as you. When someone's watching you, you can't sleep so soundly." It turns out that the person who had been following them from the riverside was lingering near Chen's house, preventing old Chen from sleeping peacefully. That person hasn't left yet. They're still hanging around outside. Chen Xiaobian also found it strange when his father mentioned it. He looked out through the window. The Chen family had an old house with a not-so-high courtyard wall, and indeed, there was a person's head constantly moving outside the courtyard wall. "I want to see what kind of evil spirit is causing trouble here." Chen Xiaobian couldn't wait and wanted to go out to see who the person was. Old Chen didn't stop him and got up to follow him. "Be careful, I'm not afraid of him. Everyone knows that demons and monsters wouldn't dare to openly roam around in broad daylight. He must be an ordinary person, but he keeps lurking outside without showing himself." "Who are you? What are you doing here?" With youthful impetuosity, Chen Xiaobian opened the courtyard door and shouted towards the outside. However, to his surprise, the person outside was also crouched near the door. Looking inside, they ended up face to face. At this moment, the two faces were only about a foot apart when Chen Xiaobian saw the face right in front of him. He was so scared that his soul almost fled. Who said this was a human? It clearly looked like a demon. "Wow, it's a ghost." After realizing, Chen Xiaobian screamed in fear and stepped back repeatedly. "Why are you making such a fuss?" "I'm sorry, Mr. Chen, I'm really sorry." Old Chen seemed to have a clear understanding already, and the female ghost now nervously pulled down her hair to cover half of her face and respectfully bowed to old Chen. "Zhao's wife, how did you end up at my house, old Chen? I have no other choice. Please, save us." It was only now that Chen Xiaobian noticed that even with half her face covered, the woman looked quite delicate. He felt a bit embarrassed. Old Chen asked about the reason, and the woman burst into tears. "Old Chen, please save us. It was all our fault before." The woman sobbed, and she looked genuinely pitiful. It seemed that she had come to seek help from old Chen. "Old Chen, I beg you. Our family is really in a terrible situation now." But old Chen, who had always been responsive to the villagers' requests, remained silent with his head down. This left Xiaobian feeling confused, but he also knew his father's temperament and didn't dare to speak up. "Old Chen, I'm begging you." The woman kept crying and pleading at the door, but old Chen just turned around and went back inside, leaving Xiaobian no choice but to follow him. "I've heard what you said. I'll do my best. Thank you. Thank you so much." They'd reached the courtyard, and old Chen finally spoke without looking back. "I'm not doing this for you, for the sake of your late husband. Now, go." Old Chen left without even a glance. "Thank you." After hearing old Chen's words, the woman stood there in silence for a while, and then said, "Thank you." It seemed she knew she was in the wrong, which was why she had followed the Chen father and son all day without daring to knock on their door. "Dad, what's going on here?" Xiaobian couldn't hold back any longer, and after the woman left, closed the courtyard door and eagerly asked about the situation. "It's a long story." Seeing Xiaobian's question, old Chen's thoughts went back to over a decade ago. He sighed and began to tell the story slowly. It turns out, 19 years ago, when old Chen and Xiaobian arrived in Guanling village, they were helpless and injured. Fortunately, They were taken in and cared for by an old man named Zhao. They survived the toughest days with his help, and since then, old Chen had been very grateful and had become good friends with Zhou. At that time, Zhao's grandfather had just passed away, and to repay the kindness, old Chen helped find an excellent feng shui burial site near the village for Zhao's family to bury their deceased elder. Brother, trust me, this burial site will bring great prosperity and well-being to your family for generations. I believe you. Normally, someone with an unclear background like old Chen wouldn't easily gain trust when offering help, but Zhou was different. He had complete trust in old Chen. You're giving me too much credit. I can tell you're not an ordinary person. You must have faced some difficulties and come to this small place in despair, because Zhao's family had been generations of medical practitioners. He had some knowledge himself. Moreover, he had long recognized that old Chen was not an idle person. So, Zhou listened to old Chen and placed his father's grave on a slope south of the northern mountain. Believe it or not, ever since the grave was placed there, life for Zhao's family became smooth sailing. In just a few years, they were the first in the village to build a 2-story house. Old Chen, I'm not doing well anymore, and I need your help with this grave. I'm not asking for great wealth, just the well-being of my family. Several more years passed, and Zhou's health deteriorated. He summoned old Chen to his home and made a request. All right, I'll say it again, as long as you trust me. I'll do my best. Of course, I trust you. We've known each other for so many years. Old Chen calculated that Zhao was reaching the end of his days, and there was no other way. He reluctantly agreed to Zhao's request, without giving false reassurances. Just then, the door of Zhao's house suddenly opened. Dad, my uncle from the city has come to see you. Please sit down. I can't get up to entertain you properly. It turned out to be the maternal uncle of Zhao's daughter-in-law, who had suddenly come to inquire about old Zhao's health. Old Chen, upon understanding the situation, quickly got up and offered his seat. Dad, my uncle is a famous feng shui master in the city, very skilled. After this, I'll ask my uncle to choose a good grave for you. After listening to Zhao's daughter-in-law's praises of her maternal uncle, who seemed to be a feng shui master, old Chen finally understood the reason for this person's visit. What nonsense is this girl talking about? You can tell that I'm a person who will live a long life, and things will turn for the better this time. However, the mannerisms and words of this person, as soon as they arrived, gave old Chen a feeling of a swindler. But since he was an outsider and didn't know much about this person, he didn't say much. Thank you for your kind words. Fortunately, Zhao was knowledgeable in medicine himself and knew his own health condition well. He took the person's words as words of comfort and didn't say much more. But this illness cannot be cured with just a few comforting words, and one's lifespan cannot be reversed with a few kind words. After a few days, the Zhao family set up a mourning hall, and old Zhou passed away. Old Zhao was very well liked in the village, and when he passed away, people from the whole village came to pay their respects. However, at this time, old Chen did not appear. Instead, he came alone to the northern mountain. After observing for the entire morning, old Chen had already confirmed the location of Zhao's grave. But just then, he suddenly noticed a group of people coming up the mountain path. From a distance, it turned out to be a funeral procession, with about a dozen people or so. They were scattering yellow paper and carrying a coffin as they approached. Old Chen took a closer look and realized that the person leading the procession was Zhou Jiangguo, old Zhao's son, holding a memorial tablet as he walked at the forefront. Jiangguo, what are you doing? The memorial has only been held for a day, and the soul has not yet departed. How can you take it out? Old Chen was terrified by this situation. He hurried forward, blocking the group of people. I've calculated. and today is an auspicious day for the funeral. It's suitable for breaking ground and relocating graves. Does Mr. Chen have any objections? Is there really an auspicious day for funerals? Before Zhao Jianguo could respond, the maternal uncle, who claimed to be a Feng Shui master, stepped forward. Everyone, hurry. Don't delay the auspicious time. Old Chen, you wouldn't understand. My uncle is a master from the city. Old Chen was choked by the words of the so-called master and Zhao's daughter-in-law. Since ancient times, stopping the mourning for 3 or 7 days is a regional difference between North and South. But the need to stop mourning before a funeral has never changed. How could there be a need to choose a specific date for the funeral? At this point, Old Chen had already seen through the so-called master as a fraud, but now that Old Zhao had passed away, he was an outsider, and it seemed no one would listen to him. Old Chen thought to himself that as long as Old Zhao was buried near his father, it shouldn't be too bad. After all, Old Zhu only wished for his descendants' well-being. However, to his surprise, the group of people didn't come up the mountain, but prepared a grave in the flat area below the slope, ready for the burial. Why are you burying here? You can't bury someone here. This infuriated Old Chen, and he couldn't help but run forward to block them once again. Jianguo, this is a place with unfavorable feng shui. How can you bury someone here? Are you crazy? It turned out that although this place was not far from the slope, burying someone downhill would bring misfortune to the main family. Old Chen knew that Zhao's daughter-in-law wouldn't listen to him, so he explained the situation to Jianguo. Uncle is amazing indeed, who said that this place is surrounded by mountains on 3 sides and faces the water on 1 side. It's a vibrant and excellent burial site. Mr. Chen has lived in the mountain village for a long time and doesn't understand. But Jianguo stuttered for a long time without saying a word, and the maternal uncle behind him took over. Old Chen, what are you trying to do? You, an uncertified barefoot doctor. What can you understand? Dear, don't be rude. People from rural areas may not have seen much of the world. It's hard for them to understand. Zhao's daughter-in-law chimed in, and the two of them continued to taunt Old Chen. Jianguo, you decide on this matter. Jianguo, think it over carefully before you speak. At this point, Old Chen had no intention of arguing with them. He let Jianguo decide where to bury because Old Zhao had repeatedly urged his son to follow Old Chen's arrangements. Uncle Chen, I'm sorry, but I'll go with my wife's arrangements. But Jianguo was usually very afraid of his wife, and he had lost his backbone. He completely ignored his father's instructions. Jianguo's words left Old Chen helpless. Those people followed the orders of the main family and began to work, while Old Chen could only watch in frustration. Guided by the Feng Shui master, they buried Old Zhou's coffin in the grave below the slope. Then they dug a new grave nearby and planned to move Old Zhao's father's coffin here because the Feng Shui master said the original grave had bad Feng Shui. Those people also knew that the old grave had been there for over a decade, and the coffin and corpse might have deteriorated, so they set up a tripod on the grave and lifted the old coffin out. But when they opened the old coffin, everyone present was shocked. They realized that they had all been mistaken. Upon opening the coffin, they found that although Old Zhao's father had been buried for nearly 10 years, his body had not decayed at all. The coffin contained a pool of clear water, and the body looked lifelike. Oh my! This is an excellent burial site. This is a disaster. Such a pity. This is terrible. Now, everyone started discussing and saying that when Old Chen chose the site, it was a Feng Shui auspicious place or abundant coffin wealth. Now it had been ruined, and it was a great act of filial impiety. We can't do this anymore. Exactly. This is too sinful. No amount of money can make us do this. Several people who were hired to help were afraid to lend a hand after seeing this situation. Fearing they would be blamed by Old Zhou's ancestors, They turned and left. What do you people from the countryside know? How can it be a good thing for the corpse to soak in water? This is harming the Zhao family. Come back and listen to me. That's right. What do you know? But at this point, the so-called Feng Shui master's maternal uncle couldn't maintain his composure. He began to argue defensively, and Zhao's daughter-in-law could only continue to support him on the side. You won't get a single penny for today's work. You fools, they don't even know how to do it themselves. However, no matter what they said, those people weren't stupid. They packed up their tools and left, leaving only the three of them at the gravesite. Uncle, be careful. The body has been torn apart. It's okay. It's good that it rots away. This, you need to compensate me extra for. Don't be stingy. Listen to your uncle. At this point, the maternal uncle had no choice but to help Jianguo carry the old man's body out. However, as soon as the body left the pool of clear water, it rapidly turned pitch black and began to decompose rapidly, making both of them extremely embarrassed. I'm so tired. When have I ever done such rough work? You have to pay me extra. Okay, don't worry, Uncle. Old Chen couldn't bear to watch any longer, so he sighed and walked away. At this point, the old man's body had been ruined, and they hurriedly buried it. He wanted to repay old Zhao's kindness, but in this situation, he was helpless. Old Chen looked at old Zhao's grave and sighed deeply. It seemed that everything was fate. Under the guidance of the Feng Shui master, 2 graves were erected below the slope on the north side, visible only from the south. Although the villagers thought it looked grand and impressive, it didn't quite fit the burial customs of the north. After moving the graves from the Zhao family to the slope below, life became worse day by day. Jianguo's wife didn't have children for several years, and the once prosperous small business at home gradually declined. Not long after, Jianguo went out on business and was hit by a van. Although he survived, both of his legs were broken, and he could only lie in bed waiting for his wife to take care of him. Jianguo's wife finally became pregnant and gave birth to a child. However, when the child was born, they discovered that the baby had a congenital deformity, and there was little hope of treatment. But the string of bad luck didn't end there. Jianguo's wife had a gas explosion accident while cooking, and half of her face was burned, leaving her with a disfigured appearance. The Feng Shui master reportedly later made a name for himself in Beijing and cheated many people out of money. However, he was eventually exposed and met a miserable end. Dad, is it worth helping someone like him? There was no other choice. Jianguo's wife, with a thick skin, came to find old Chen again, hoping he could help save their family. Well, let's not say that. After all, old Zhou did me a favor, and if his descendants have remorse in their hearts, perhaps divine retribution can be averted. Old Chen was a righteous person, and he had received a drop of water's worth of kindness from old Zhou. How could he stand idly by? Dad, how can we help? Should we dig him up and rebury him? No need. Pack your things, and I'll teach you how to create a corpse-nurturing ground.